Hey everyone, this is your host Eric Brown of NRE the Wrestleverse, and yeah, this video is a little bit late, I know. I was planning to cover this during my 10 days off after the show, but one, the AEW broadcast was delayed because HBO Max wants to piss me off because David Zaslav no doubt spies on my internet and realizes I despise his guts of how he's managed the company. But that's a completely different subject altogether, one that you can check out on my NRE Universe page on YouTube. But that's beside the point, even though it should be. After that, I stayed up the whole night, waited hours upon hours of whatnot after I fell asleep around 10. No way, this was after. So I went to bed, got up. First thing I did was have lunch, and then I proceeded to watch the Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega team up that no one saw coming, except for Don Callis because he accidentally made this happen, versus the combined alliance of the Don Callis families, Konosuke Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher. Now, I have not talked about any of the matches and lead into what I was originally going to talk about Kenny Omega's return AEW match against Brian Cage, the Machine. But then I decided it would probably be better to combine everything into one massive package that leads to this tag team grudge match. So let's start this off. So Kenny Omega returned to wrestling, hurrah, after a huge battle with diverticulitis, having to get surgery, scrapping all of AEW's plans such as the dream rematch of Okada versus Omega at All In London last year, because that was the original plan. And Kenny Omega, being the stubborn person that he is, was like, I don't need surgery, I can handle this. Never mind, I need surgery and I cannot handle this. So he got surgery from the best that AEW could provide, the best surgeon of the country apparently. I don't know who, that's what I was hearing about. But with that going on, Kenny Omega, by God, made his ultimate return at World's End, presenting the Continental Championship against Okada. And subsequently doing the obvious sign that he's going to fight Okada at All In Texas, which will be a phenomenal match, no doubt. But I'll get to that later. But as that was going on, there was stuff going on the side. Kyle Fletcher, Will Ospreay, and the Don Callis family. So to kick things off, Will Ospreay won last year and stated his intent to leave the Don Callis family, leave it all behind, and move on and with his career. Don Callis was like, "Sure, you can leave, but we need to make a deal." So they made a deal, and Will Ospreay would team up with the Don Callis family a few more times as part of this negotiated deal release from the group. Then came when Konosuke Takeshita attacked Will Ospreay, and beat the living hell out of him, following his big stellar match with Ricochet that ended in a draw. And then Don Callis would accidentally confess that yes, he sent Konosuke Takeshita to come after him because, Don Callis is kind of mad that Will Ospreay thinks he has the balls to stand on his own without his guidance. And this leads to a stellar triple threat match between Konosuke Takeshita, Will Ospreay, and Ricochet, which was an awesome match, phenomenal all around. Talents are so great. And Kyle Fletcher would return, stabbing his best buddy in the back with a screwdriver, symbolism, and all that, and would cost Will Ospreay the AEW International Championship, giving it to Konosuke Takeshita, and finally giving the fans, and what he had rightfully earned, the opportunity to get a run with a championship. And it's with one of the best titles currently going in AEW. That is not the world title. But moving on from that part, as that saga unfolds, Konosuke Takeshita would go on to defend the International Championship in some places, go ahead and win the Never Openweight Championship against Shingo Takagi in a stellar matchup that was awesome at New Japan Pro Wrestling, and would then defend it against Tomohiro Ishii at Wrestle Dynasty, winning that too, and becoming a double champion. Hurrah! But as that's been going on, Will Ospreay took his attention away from Konosuke and back to Kyle Fletcher, leading to what was going to happen with him, United Empire, and Oze, oi, since Mark Davis was still injured at the time. Mark Davis would later return and state that he was on Will Ospreay's side, and that, but even address that there are consequences for Ospreay's actions, like joining up with the Don Callis family and knowing that Don Callis is a rat bastard, essentially. And I just love the fact that even the faces are like, look, dude, we get it, you're trying to change, but seriously, we warned you this was going to happen, and no one listened. Makes me think about something else that everyone kept warning something about and no one listened, and yet they went with it anyways. And I'm not talking about wrestling. Anyways, Ospreay was finally going through the fuck around portion of his went through the fuck around portion and was now in the find out phase. But as that was going on, Kyle Fletcher would take on Will Ospreay at Full Gear and surprisingly defeat him, pinning him 1, 2, 3, and ooh boy. Then the Continental Classic happened. Will Ospreay made to the finals after defeating Kyle Fletcher in the semifinals, while Ricochet would evolve into his new character arc called Richotate in his feud with Shore Strickland, which has been awesome. But while that was also going on, Don Callis and whatnot was doing his big plans with Konosuke Takeshita, like I mentioned. And when Kenny Omega came back, the first thing they did was finally continue the feud between Don Callis and Kenny Omega. So while that was going on, Kenny Omega would go ahead and fight Brian Cage, who had joined up with the Don Callis family. They lost Powerhouse Hobbs in between the seasons. After his return from injury, which sucked, but I get it, and I certainly hope Powerhouse Hobbs gets an opportunity in a faction. Syndicate. I don't know where that came from. But while that was going on, Brian Cage would team up, would go against Kenny Omega in a pretty good 10-minute matchup. It was a pretty good start to showcase that Kenny is back and still great as he ever been. And then the Don Callis family proceeds to beat the crap out of him until Will Ospreay came to the rescue, leading to an unsuspecting event going on with those two. And yeah, things got worse for them. They also got their asses kicked by the Don Callis family. And Will Ospreay was like, okay, I'm a man, I'm brave enough to do it. I'm brave enough to beg. Kenny, we gotta team up. We gotta form this alliance. I've been trying to fight a former United Front against Jon Moxley. That has failed completely. But with the Don Callis family in my beck and call at my issues, I need to get rid of them first before we can get rid of Moxley. So tying in the connected threads with the No Man's Land storyline, as I called it, on my YouTube channel on Wrestleverse. And leading to Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay having a confrontation microphone segment where Will Ospreay lays out the whole groundwork of the situation, and Kenny Omega was like, yeah, I hate Don Callis too, but I do not want to team up with you. Mainly because didn't you stab me with a screwdriver he gave you and whatnot? And then he doesn't say, but let's be real, he's probably thinking it. And you made fun of my golden lover and used my finisher? I will never forgive you. And Don Callis, prior to this, was trying to find ways to stop this from happening, stop a potential dangerous alliance between Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega. And yeah, he should not have done that. I'll get to that in a second. But yeah. And then they had this big dinner segment promo on Collision, I believe it was, where Don Callis has this big meeting with all members of the Don Callis family, except for Trent Beretta. He's still out of action due to being whacked in the skull by Orange Cassidy with a wrench. Yeah, that was the thing. So sadly, he's not at the meeting. So Don Callis has this meeting with Brian Cage, Lance Archer, who was traded to Don Callis by Jake the Snakes, because Jake the Snakes surprisingly went with Los Angeles, or LFI, I believe, but I just call Los Angeles whatever. It's been so long since I last talked about them. I also forgot to talk about them in the No Man's Land video because I kind of forgot they were around. Wasn't Rouge injured at the time? Or was he just not doing anything that was of a big storyline that required attention? Either way, I don't know. I lost track of everything. But beyond that, Don Callis had this big meeting with Brian Cage, Kyle Fletcher, Konosuke Takeshita, Lance Archer, and talked about how, and Brian Cage tried to assure them that, hey, look, we're going to be fine. There's 5 of us. And Don Callis points out that this is Kenny by God Omega. When I was with him, he was battered, wounded. He was a wounded animal, and we got him and he got 3 world championships around his waist. 4 if we want to count the TNA title, which was inactive at the time since it was replaced by Impact. But it was 3, damn it. It was 3. I got him there. And besides, who said there was 5? And they all look at each other and be like, there's another? Yep. Yeah, so there's another. No, there is another, essentially. And who will assist them in their crusade. But we don't know who that is yet. But I like that nugget tease there. But when Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega looked like they were about to physically fight, thus making it a war on 2 fronts, Don Callis, in his grand stupidity, came out and brought out the entire Don Callis family on this show. Probably should not have done that because he invoked the Streisand effect by having this happen, because what could have been them fighting each other and then they can pick up the bones after turned into, oh, they're gonna work together. And then we got a new awesome meme with Kenny Omega looking crazy while Will Ospreay looks confused and like and whatnot, pointing at something, and Kenny Omega looking like a very psychotic, enraged girlfriend. I don't know how I even got that visual in my mind, but okay. But it was funny. But then they did this hardcore wrestling segment to open up that show. It was freaking awesome. I'm glad they kept the full segment on YouTube from AEW's main YouTube channel. That was awesome. And Kenny Omega says, okay, guess I'm really to say I'm sorry, but we need to top this off. We need to take out the 2 big ones. So, you in? Let's go ahead and do it. Grand Slam Australia, bruv. Kyle Fletcher, Konosuke Takeshita versus Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay. Essentially, Don Callis, realizing that he was a complete utter buffoon, realizing, oh god, I invoked the Streisand effect. Which, I'm pretty sure if we wanted to make a story out of that, I'm gonna bring this up anyways because you know I love doing this. If Paul Heyman and Don Callis ever interacted with each other during a build-up for Roman Reigns and Kenny Omega, Paul Heyman could be like, well, at least I didn't invoke the Streisand effect on anything. We all had this plan from day one. Me and Roman went ahead and plotted to usurp the beast Brock Lesnar. Monster that he is nowadays, been exposed as. We had that plan. You were trying so hard to stop something, you let it happen anyways, by a horrible accident. So, and then Don Callis would probably just whine about the fact that he killed ECW and how he represented the turn, how he represented TNN, aka Spike TV at the time, and said, well, I killed your baby. which will be a more of a if you don't understand the context and connotations of what Paul Heyman saw ECW as. But anyways, yeah, I just need to bring that up for the hell of it, because I'm just fantasy booking a Roman Reigns Kenny Omega match, and I'm just loving the idea. But moving on from that, we would get our big match as the opener for Grand Slam Australia. Damn, that's a great way to start the show. And before I get to that match, I need to talk about this. What the fuck? What the absolute fuck was the ring is too small? WWE would never make that mistake. Okay, I'm going to point this out. I'm going to be delicate about this. Not really, I'm going to be brutal. I didn't even notice the size of the ring because I was watching the fucking show. I was watching the goddamn show. And yeah, I'm seeing, I later here, the next day, around 10 p.m., I had a nap. I wake up, I go on Blue Sky, and I find out that there's something about people talking about the wrestling ring doesn't affect the quality of the show. And I was like, what? What did this come? Oh, fuck off. Like, are we really at this point? So yeah, I was on Blue Sky, and I find out that there are people whining and complaining and ranting and grifting on the size of the AEW ring they had at Grand Slam. And I was like, oh, this happens every time. If there's a great show, they need to find something to whine about. And then I find out that other people, that QT Marshall had to address this whole thing. Actually, he didn't. He just could tell. Honestly, if he wanted to, he should have just told him to fuck off. Like, okay, you're reaching for this. Like, if I was QT Marshall, and I'm so glad I'm not in this situation, I would either have ignored the tweet or left entirely and went to Blue Sky like everyone else in AEW seems to be doing. If I was QT Marshall, I would have just went like, what? He kind of did that. He didn't like get mad about it. He just kept saying, what? How did we miscalculate? Wait, what's going on? And wait, how were you know? Were you at these meetings? Yeah. Yeah. Part of me actually wanted to cut this segment. Before pre-recording and just mention at the end, but it's just case that I didn't notice it. Like, that was how bad this got, because I didn't notice the size of the ring. It was just a wrestling ring. They did a match. It was awesome. Fuck off. But yeah, for some reason, the WWE Tribalists lost their minds and then once again compared it to their Lord and Saviors, who are currently going through a whole bunch of crap right now due to recent lawsuits and other allegations, and, you know, Triple H being at a certain hearing where he rolls his eyes about certain subjects because that's like the worst time to do so. He knows, and he should have known that would have been bad look, especially when they're recording it. But that's beside the point. The fact that happened and they ignore that stuff, but AEW has a small ring, therefore AEW's dead. It's like, oh my god, this is what video games have become for online people. The console war, where people just whine and find an excuse to say PlayStation is dead, Xbox is dead, and I'm just like, can we just play good games? How about we go ahead and unite our causes against the corrupt gaming industry to give us better games, to treat their employees right, to go ahead and treat everybody equally and give them a fair living wage for all the hard work, and stop laying off people just to spike a revenue growth. We could get some serious changes with this kind of energy they give. And yet, no, I need to worship the plastic box. I need to worship this company's plastic box because they gave me my childhood or some bullshit. Okay, so I got that thing out of my system. Okay, let's get back to it. I just needed a rant to start this off because this was an after thing. So Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega and versus Kyle Fletcher and Konosuke Takeshita. Like I said in the rant, it's a freaking awesome match. These are 4 of some of the best talents in AEW, and there's a lot of great talent in AEW currently. And this was a tag team grudge match. If anything, this was what it needed to be. And I love the whole enemy of my enemy is my friend. Honestly, Don Callis should have cut the Makarov promo against Ospreay and Kenny Omega, where he says, one day you or Ospreay are going to learn that cuts both ways. Suggesting that eventually Ospreay and Kenny will eventually turn on the other, but well, that will wait. But Don Callis came out and he has a bodyguard now. He has Mark Davis from Aussie Open. Aussie, oi, oi, oi. Aussie, oi, oi, oi. Now, why is Mark Davis, after he decreed his allegiance was towards Will Ospreay, suddenly joined with the Don Callis family? Well, it turns out, during that entire period where Mark Davis had that big injury and he was left, apparently, Don Callis had kind of gotten a hold of his contract and took control of it. I do not know how that even happened, but at least we got something of an explanation on that front. Where now Don Callis has complete control over Mark Davis until Mark Davis says, I've had enough and I'll gladly get fired if I have to. They could argue, like, there's other explanations. Like, they could bring in the real life mention of Tony Khan paying his bill and just say it was Don Callis who paid his medical bills and whatnot. And thus, he negotiated other dealings with Tony Khan to make certain that the contract of Mark Davis fell under his control. That would make a lot of sense. That could work. I hope they use that, and if they do use that, I want $500,000, please, Tony Khan, please, for God's sakes. But beyond that, Mark Davis doesn't do much in the tag team match. He doesn't get involved. He's just there to protect Don Callis. Like, I hate this job, and it just goes on this in this match. Don Callis gets more involved. He tries to screw Will Ospreay over, fails miserably, but and then we get like several OMG moments in this match alone that I'm glad it was the opening match and not the main event. Like this could have been the main event and would have been done well. But the fact that this was the opening match set the tone, and for the later main event match to set the finale for it, to set the explosive climax for it, which worked. I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a future video. But Konosuke Takeshita grabs Kenny Omega and then pushes him into Will Ospreay to grab him and does a double release German suplex. And it's like, the power is his. The power is Konosuke Takeshita's. And that was awesome. Freaking awesome right there. And then we get an OMG moment from Will Ospreay, where Will Ospreay, as Konosuke Takeshita is on the ground, is laying on the ring post, dazed and confused. Kyle Fletcher's outside the ring, and Will Ospreay latches onto Konosuke's back, jumps off of him, jumps over the ring post to crash into Kyle Fletcher and get back in the ring and act like nothing happened. And I was like, oh god, this is so freaking awesome. And then Kenny, by God, Omega beats down Konosuke Takeshita, does the devastating V-trigger. Awesome. I'm still waiting for my Buddy Matthews versus Kenny Omega battle of the V-trigger match. That would just be freaking sweet. And then it all culminates in Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay combining their powers. With their powers combined, they create the one-winged angel hidden blade. or I could call it the One Wing Angel's Hidden Blade, because that sounds awesome, and it kind of makes me think Sephiroth has a secret blade coming out of him. That just sounds kind of an awesome idea, but that's a different matter. I don't work at Final Fantasy at Square Enix. And then Kenny Omega pins Konosuke Takeshita, surprisingly. I thought Kyle Fletcher was going to be the fall guy, but there is a purpose to this. I'll get to that. And Don Callis tries to go in there and save the day. He fails miserably to move in time, and it's just in stunned disbelief. And it's like, no! You'll pay for this, Kenny Omega! Like a Captain Planet villain. That was the facial reaction I got from him. Yeah. And then after that show, we got some announcements made following the show. Will Ospreay has challenged Kyle Fletcher to a steel cage match at AEW Revolution. Banger. And then it was announced that Konosuke Takeshita there will be a small mini tournament for the International Championship. Konosuke Takeshita, no doubt, will defend his title against an opponent in this tournament. I forgot the names of who was he supposed to fight, but let's be real, they're just going to be people he's going to beat up. And then it will culminate with him fighting Kenny by God Omega at Revolution. Banger after banger. So get ready for that. Though I am confused, shouldn't Kenny Omega be doing the tournament and Konosuke should be like waiting in the lion's den and waiting for his prey to show itself, waiting for the strongest prey to be like, I am waiting, and please let it be Kenny. By God, Kenny Omega, I've beaten you twice in a row. You may have pinned me in a tag team match, but you have not truly beaten me in singles action. I am now the Alpha and the Omega. I am Konosuke Takeshita. While he holds the international championship over his shoulder, and he holds the Never Openweight Championship. But when I heard that Kenny Omega would no doubt be fighting Konosuke for the International Championship, I was like, yes! Then Kenny Omega can not only attain his long-awaited victory that he was robbed of from Konosuke Takeshita and finally get his revenge after several years of betrayal. And after trying to go after his lover, his golden lover. Yeah, I'm just going with it. Kenny Omega can now walk into All In Texas as the international champion to take on the Continental Champion Kazuchika Okada, the king of Boom Style. And they shall fight for both the International and the Continental Championship. And they shall unify them. They will be called a Intercontinental Championship. Yes, that is a brilliant idea. Definitely not been used so many times in the past. But it will be a beautiful, beautiful new championship, combining the best of what makes it the International Championship and what makes it the best of the Continental Championship. And then Kenny Omega will defend that title for God knows how long and will compete in the Continental Classic, which will be a glorious match. Damn it. That's at least the dream I envision. While Will Ospreay will finally achieve his ultimate revenge against Kyle Fletcher. The Don Callis family will be broken up, will be having the morale destroyed. Unless they decide to pull swerve and have Kyle Fletcher defeat Will Ospreay, which I'll be alright with. I'm alright with that, especially though it might be having to prove Mark Davis's loyalty. Does it lie with the contractual obligation of Don Callis, or does he say fuck the job and be by his bro side? Who knows? I would love to see Aussie Open continue their tag team gloriness. We'll see heading into Revolution. Like, this is gonna be a fucking awesome show. I'll admit that. Just for those 2 matches alone, we already have it. And that's not counting Jon Moxley versus Adam Copeland. That's going to be an awesome match. But we'll see you all again. This was your host, Eric Brown of NRE Wrestleverse. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Check out the content description below. Stay tuned for more. I'll see you all again next time. Peace and take care. And, oh, God. The road to revolution is paved in blood.